preapproved.com, the passive real estate investor club, and one half of the Real Estate Brothers, bringing you the Hawaii Real Estate News Now, a monthly update on where we are in the Hawaii real estate market. Also here, Dean Ueda. How's it going, Dean?
Hey, Lane.
So today we are going to talk about how to buy a home. Dean's got all these steps outlined here, and hopefully we'll both be here to make sure you guys don't go to sleep and you learn all of this. Hopefully it'll be good for a new homeowner and seller, and it might be a couple of things to learn from for some of you experienced folks out there. But before we move on, please make sure you guys go to the YouTube channel and subscribe to our channel there, so you don't miss out on any of the monthly updates and other content just like this. So a little bit introduction about myself. I write a blog called Simple Passive Cash Flow, where I podcast. You can find that on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. And I run the reialoha.com Facebook and meetup groups. We try and meet up at least once a month, sometimes twice a month. And just finished up a book here, and you guys can grab a free e-version of the book if you text the word ebook to 587-317-6099. Again, text ebook to 587-317-6099. And my buddy here, Dean, want to introduce yourself and we'll get going with the presentation.
Yep. Hi, I'm Dean Ueda. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn or email me at deanueda@gmail.com or call and text anytime. And of course, like Lane said, we have our YouTube channel that's going to be having great content for you. So
Dean's the real realtor here. I'm not a real realtor. So
yeah.
and investor primarily first, right?
Right. Cool. So yeah, we're here to talk about how to buy a home. This can be for the investor or some owner occupant. And here's the steps. I'll try to go through them quickly and not answer questions, but basically starting with selecting the agent and also the lender for pre-approval. Then it goes to your consultation with your buyer and your agent. Then going through selecting properties, and then.
I always put the slide in here because.
Okay.
We're not attorneys, so please consult your professional. But I think between the two of us, we own more than 1,200 properties, investment properties together. So I think we know a thing or two about this. So first thing here, Dean, tell us about selecting an agent.
Yeah. So
something tells me you gotta trust somebody and do that.
Yeah, that cat doing the trust fall exactly. Yeah. So I mean, it's a service that you're paying for, and it might be one of the biggest transactions that you have or will have. So main thing is to shop around and be patient, right? It's like looking for a tax accountant, looking for an attorney. And with that said, everyone's looking for something a little different, and everyone's selection process is a little different. So some things to consider. Of course, experience, right? You're always going to want someone who's been there, done that, and has a lot of under their belt, so that they have a lot to offer. Service oriented, there to answer your questions, there to provide support when you need. Detail oriented, of course. I mean, you're dealing with contracts, right? Purchase contract is standard 14 pages now, so 14 plus adding in all the addendum and anything like that. So very much important in my mind, to have someone that's very detail oriented. Also, negotiation skills. There's various points within the purchase process that will definitely need negotiating skills between the buying and selling agents. So that's very important. And then, of course, there's price. What are you paying for commissions? And this is something a little bit more handled on the seller side, but it is also controllable on the purchasing side too. Yeah. And also something I like to refer to as the little black book, and that's added value that agents would hopefully have if you need, say, when you buy the property or your home, and you need, a trusted electrician that you can count on, that is licensed and that provides good work, or a plumber, or I mean, I like to say that, if there's anything that you need, I can provide for you. If like a tax accountant or a lender, but that or lender, but that's getting off topic. And at the end of the day, it just comes down to who you trust, right? So take your time in selecting your agent, because that's gonna be um, the beginning of this. Start the beginning of hopefully a long relationship. Yeah.
So when you meet up with folks, how do you guys do it? You guys meet up at Starbucks, then you guys do the trust fall, or how do people normally select an agent from your point of view?
It totally depends, because I've heard I've had situations where the buyers, they walk into my open house and they say, "Oh yeah, I'm looking for a place," and then that relationship starts there. There's also, of course, the family and friends thing where it's oh, I trust that my cousin's not gonna screw me over or mess me up, and he'll do what's right for me. Um, there's yeah, it totally depends, and where we meet, it just it could actually be a Starbucks, or like I said, maybe it starts off at open house, but it just depends. Every situation is different. That's what's kind of fun about real estate, I think, is every situation is different.
I know I keep thinking that that cat's gonna actually hit the ground, but he doesn't.
So yeah, so it comes down to trust. And next, sometimes this happens before selecting an agent, but hopefully not. Selecting a lender and assuming it's not a cash transaction, selecting a lender, and of course, and I suggest definitely to get pre-approved. And the reason for that is it's such a strong seller's market that the you want to prove to a seller's agent that you're serious. So coming in with a strong offer, as well as a pre-approval letter, lets the sellers know that you mean business. Um,
Yeah,
so
as a when I work with investors, this is usually the first thing I have them do is
yeah.
go and get pre-approved first. No, not we do like non-owner occupied, so it's a little bit different,
Mm.
but a little harder to qualify. But a lot of people do this in parallel with the agent, dating the agent. But I would personally say this is kind of first.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, you want to be ready, and and of course, you want to be ready and show everyone that you're ready to pull the trigger and you mean business, because there's a high chance that you're going to be in a multiple offer situation. So
Right.
anything like that will show that you're you have the edge. And so some questions that people ask when they're looking for a lender, sometimes a lot of times, of course, they're concerned with who's offering the best rates, and just kind of like buyer beware when you are shopping around. Make sure you're comparing apples to apples, because some lender could be quoting you at their 30-day lock, and others could be at a 45-day lock. So it is there. It does make a difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another big importance thing is, will the lender be able to close as promised? That's that's very important. That's why, in my mind, having a lender that we know is tried and true, and won't be an issue. Especially you putting in offers at 45 days, and a lot of times you're typically waiting for the lender at the end of the process. That those 45 days is because you're waiting for the lender to finish up their end. Fees. Everyone asks about fees. Nowadays, there's a lot of disclosure laws, so you can get the estimates up front. So again, it's just making sure you're comparing apples to apples. And deciding if you want to go with a financial institution or a mortgage broker. Uh, there is a difference, and so you want to consider which one you want to do.
But when you work with guys, you just pretty much send them to your mortgage broker that you like, and it's
Um,
proven.
yeah, for the most part. Although I mean, there are again, it depends on the type of the situation because single family homes versus condos or townhouses, there's different issues that may um, come about. So yeah, I do have uh, preferred mortgage broker as well as loan officers at banks that I like to use too because I know they're gonna see it through. If they tell me they can, they look at the opportunity and they or the situation and they tell me that they'll be able to close, and I know that they're gonna close, and that's what counts.
Yeah, and there's no kickbacks there. I don't think I
No,
think mortgage brokers, by their license, they can't.
yeah,
Hey,
exactly.
come and use
Yep.
me. Like that's they've kind of figured that one out.
Yes, exactly. Yep, yep. And another question that um, buyers ask her is it okay to shop around? And yeah, I think that's very important to do so. Um, and it's okay even to have them multiple lenders pull credit. My understanding, and again, I'm not the loan specialist, but my understanding on the credit side is that the the experience and all the credit agencies are allowing, or when they see multiple soft pulls on your credit within a given period, it doesn't hurt you because of the fact that they're taking into account that you are shopping around for a mortgage.
Right,
So
right.
yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like everyone that says, "Oh, I don't want them to pull my credit score," but it's pretty small potatoes in the grand scheme of things. If you're not gonna
Yeah.
qualify, dude, you're not gonna qualify.
Yep, that's true. I mean, and sometimes you can try to be savvy and either pull it on your own or go to the mortgage the loan officer or whatnot. Say, I know this is my credit and I can give you rough numbers and get the pre-qualification just to do a little bit of shopping. But
Yeah,
at the end of the day, they're gonna have to pull.
yeah. I think that's a good way to start too. Is like if you know you're like a 688 credit score, you're in that top tier already. Just get a rate sheet from
Hmm.
those guys. I think if you're more upfront with these guys, it just makes things a lot easier because you know they just give you the rate sheet and you're off on your way, as opposed to giving them all these files and they run it and then come to find out you're dating three lenders and then I don't know if that's the right way of doing it. I think
Yeah,
better be good up front.
yeah, that's true. I mean, like you said, transparency. Just let them know, that you are shopping around, and so
Yeah, I
that's
guess I guess what I would suggest is, go use Dean's guy, go pull a guy from your favorite bank, and then if you've got another third guy, three is probably good enough, I think, and just pull the rate sheets, and I'm sure Dean can probably sit down with you and go through the lines and
yep,
compare fees.
yep. Yep.
Because at the
Okay.
end of the day, all pretty much all the loans, especially if you're getting a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loan, they're all going to the same end buyer. It's
Yeah.
all getting underwritten with the same rules. So whether you buy it from Bank Hawaii, Bank America, or Bank of whatever, it's going to all the same place. It really doesn't vary. The only thing
Yep.
that varies is that origination fee.
Yep. Exactly. Which is very small in the comparison to the grand scheme of things in terms of your purchase price, typically, right?
Hmm.
So after that, then once you know what you're approved for, next step is to go through the buyer consultation, and determine. That's when you work with your agent and you're checking out what what are true requirements versus what are nice to haves. And sometimes the requirements what the buyer thinks are initially requirements are actually nice to have. So it's a matter of just talking and being true with yourself, especially when it's depending on what kind of amounts you're qualifying for. So and then things that are discussed are a lot of times it's like neighborhood, right? Where do you wanna work in comparison to where do you want to live in comparison to where you work or your children go to school or whatnot, and then standard things, right? Square footage, the number of beds, and number of bathrooms. If you have any pets, what are the requirements or considerations for that? Amenities. A lot of times, the younger people or whomever want the that are going to live in a condominium. They want the pool or the jacuzzi and the barbecue pit. So that's definitely a consideration for to be discussed with your agent. Yeah. Okay.
I put this slide in here because I don't know. This is, I mean, I work with a lot of investors, and they kind of know what they're buying, but a lot of like homeowners, especially first time buyers, it's a lot of it's expectations. They have a budget for, I don't know what that thing is, like a Corolla or whatever. But they think they want like this Mercedes, and it's like, dude, like you just can't, you can't afford that, right?
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah. It's
flights
it's
go up in the
definitely
sky.
yeah. It could definitely be an educational process during that consultation, and a lot of times that goes into the next step in terms of the selection and viewing of properties. That and the buyer consultation, you're going back and forth to sometimes the viewing of properties is actually a process that we're actually educating the buyer to let them know, to your point, Lane, that that is a what they're thinking they're gonna get is the Beamer, but what they can afford is the Corolla. And again, to your point, that's more for the first time homeowners. A lot of the time when they're not familiar with the areas that they're looking for, and so it's a pretty quick education, almost a rude awakening. But
Yeah.
that's when you're dealing with the first time homeowners, though.
Yeah, and I think you and I talk about all the time, as real estate investors doing stuff on the mainland. We always talk about one of the biggest mistakes you can do financially is to buy that really, really big house that you just can't afford. And I know you're on board for kind of finding the good value, and people's got to live somewhere, so you know,
Yeah,
don't blow yourself out of the water there.
yeah, that's so true, especially in Hawaii, because I mean, for the first time homeowners who are, they want to live in, that single family home in downtown or whatnot, and to come to find out they can afford like a one bedroom in Waipahu or something. That is an example. Like a lot of times it not to that extreme, but even for me, I mean, when I first bought my first place, I remember my agent was very understanding, and she used it as an educational tool. These selecting and viewing properties in the areas that I wanted to purchase at first. So then it's an educational thing. So yeah, so for this selection and viewing properties um, portion, the agent would probably be either educating you via discussing, or it could be emailing you inventory, or even putting you on a auto email listing where you'd get filtered um, pop-ups of any activities in the areas that you're looking for, and from there you'd go out and take a look at and view properties, either open houses or private showings set up by your agent. And when you're at a point in time where you're ready to go, you're educated, you have your financing set up, then a lot of times, again, because of the market that we're in being such a strong seller's market, things that might pop up in the morning, your agent might be telling you, okay, we gotta go check this unit out or this house out today, and I'll set up an appointment, and we have to go through lunchtime or after work just to get the edge, because you want to have an edge on all the other buyers, potential buyers, and getting in your offer, which is a segue to this slide. Um, so again, we mentioned the detail orientedness of the agent, the putting together an offer. I mean, the Hawaii Association of Realtors purchase contract right now is 14 pages, and on top of that, you have typically addenda, and so there's a lot of pages of the contract of this legal document that you need to go through. So the first time it might be a little overbearing, but your agent should um, walk you through it, answer any questions that you might have, so that you're comfortable with sending in this offer.
Right. And they don't let you screw around with this contract. I mean, different associations for different states, they try and make this thing very friendly to both the buyer and seller. They
Right.
try and make it very neutral.
Yep. And actually, this purchase contract, I believe, gets looked at and revised twice a year. I think the next revision comes out this month, May. So they're the Hawaii Association of Realtors is constantly reviewing it and trying to make it not to say bulletproof, but like you said, Lane, make it fair, yeah. And if any situations arise, they try to go back in and um, tweak the template so that it would uh, kind of mitigate those kind of risks. So once you turn in uh, an offer to the seller's agent, and it's it's in the realm of what they're looking at, there might be there's a high chance that there will be negotiation of terms. And basically this could be anything from, like, of course, price. They want a little higher price, say if you offered below asking, or or if you're somewhere near, if there's a multiple offer situation, there could be um, negotiations and song and dance regarding price. Closing date could be a negotiating topic. Sometimes the seller is doing a 1031 exchange, or they're pending closing on a where they're buying next, and where they're going to live next. So maybe they want to negotiate moving that date out, or maybe another situation is moving it a shorter close date. Could be even negotiating terms could even be like choice of escrow company and escrow officer. So sometimes the um, agents have their preferred escrow company and agent for their own reasons, which is totally makes sense. And I have mine also. Could be regarding the furnishings in the house or the condo. Maybe the the buyers say, oh, I like the way you stage, or the beds that were there, and the pictures, and were very nice. Let's put that in a deal too. So that would be a negotiation of term, or we need to change um, the the writing for that kind of stuff. A few other things that I think I might have listed, uh, even as you might think that's real minor, but number of keys to be provided. Even I've had situations where we had to negotiate terms for the to get more keys for the buyer.
Yeah, and I'll add some other negotiating terms that I put in as a buyer. First, we'll talk about removing contingencies later, like the inspection and making sure you're getting enough days. But one thing I usually put in there is the lender. Talk to your lender about this, but and ask them what's the maximum amount of seller paid closing costs. So I think it's like 6% or 3%, but let's just say it's 6%. You say you settle on $100,000 purchase price. You have your broker, or you have Dean go talk to those guys that you're just going to increase the price by 6%, but also have them pay 6% instead of pay closing costs. So this is a way of getting into the deal with a little bit less money out of pocket. And this, at the end of the day, the seller doesn't care. But these are things that Dean needs to communicate over to the other side. And other things I've done with negotiated terms are, if you're buying a rental property, transferring over the tenant, and making sure all the money is in the right place. Any other things you've seen thrown in there, Dean?
Um, yeah, I mean, you never know that it's I mean, exactly what it is negotiating over those 14 pages and making sure that everyone, is is getting what they want. So it
Yeah.
yeah.
What so a lot of times your the conduit is through your broker, which is in this case Dean. Like what are you seeing on your end when you interact with these buyer agents or seller agents, depending what it is? Like are they pretty much like putting up a hard negotiating fight, or are this most of the guys kind of lame ducks in this?
Yeah, I mean, so and then that kind of goes back to that whole thing about selecting your agent. It's so interesting because, and that's the fun part of this is interacting with the agents on the other side. You have it runs the gamut. You have the ones that will just, like you said, just be a lame duck, and you have the other ones that will fight tooth and nail for every single penny, or it's, and I don't know, to me, I'm not too sure. I see myself as more of a reasonable, right? I'm gonna fight for what I think makes sense for my client, and at the same time, um, I'm not gonna, I want the deal to go through, and I'm thinking for what's best for my client, and but there's a happy medium, I think, where
Right, right. Especially with the seller's market. I mean,
yeah. Well, I've also heard of times where they've, I don't know if you call it pride or what, but agents who claim to be, the best negotiators that will get the best prices, highest price, and the highest dollar for their client. And I've heard situations where deals have been blown because of and I don't know if it's pride getting in the way, or what,
oh,
but
yeah, I know what you're talking about. Because like a lot of these guys, they like their stats, right? They want to say, "Oh, I sell properties at 7% over my asking price."
yeah, yeah, or yeah, exactly, or they're just, they're not to say nickel and diming, but they're trying to prove to their client that they're the best, and they'll get everything that they say they're gonna. But you know, they like I said, there's a middle ground in terms of not being the one that bends over, and versus the one that you know gets everything that they want, because it is actually what it says. It's negotiating. So and it's an art form, right?
Right.
Okay, so after all of that song and dance is done, then the best part is, this is where everything starts. Once the contract is accepted, So, and again, that's what I'm saying. The clock starts because this is when we move into the one of the important aspects of the transaction process, which is um, removing contingencies. So basically, that purchase contract has built in it a lot of um, safeguards for both the buyer and the seller, is what I like to call them. And those are referred to as contingencies, and they're milestones that have specific time frames that allow the buyer to do due diligence. For example, the inspection, the J1 inspection, and so you pay a professional to come in and do the inspection, assuming that you didn't waive this contingency, and then it would go back to potentially more negotiating terms in terms of potential fixes, or maybe credits or reduction of price, just depending on the situation. We also have the mortgage, getting your financing. That's a contingency, right? So making sure the underwriting goes through properly. Appraisal is a big thing, to making sure that you don't have control over this, but if the appraisal comes in at asking price or not, it could determine a little bit more negotiation, or it could actually lead to the transaction falling through if the the buyer can't come up with additional funds, or the seller doesn't want to go down in price. Um, if it's single family home, there's surveys performed typically, and you could have um, you could have issues in terms of
One that comes up a lot is, like if there's like a fence, right? And then you get like the surveyor drawings coming back and it's like one survey draws it this way and the other draws it this way, and then now you have a dispute, right?
Yeah.
So then you have to do a boundary survey. It doesn't happen too much in like plan sub
Right.
developments, but more in the rural areas, this happens a lot.
Thanks
Um,
for buying me time. Yep. The word is encroachments.
yeah, yeah. I
But
mean,
yeah, so
I do this a lot of my day job, and
mhm,
it's no fun.
right. But my understanding, the encroachments, or now that the surveys techniques have been getting more precise, more encroachments have been issues regarding
Right. They're starting to do this thing called like GPS. It's a
mm,
pretty cool
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the lasers, right? They use the
Yeah.
lasers, right? And then um, also the seller also discloses any it's issues that they might have. That's also a standard form that the seller would submit to the buyer, um, and then the buyer has a period that they can review. And then of course you have title search to make sure that the property is owned free and clear and there's no liens or anything. And if the property is with a condo or an association, there's a condo documents review contingency also.
Right. So the main ones here, I think, are the going out and getting your inspector, and that contingency. If
Yeah.
your if your lender screws up and you can't get your financing, you have the financing contingency. Those
Mhm.
are the kind of the two main ones. Are those being waived these days? What's happening out there?
Oh, I also forgot to one mention. There's also termite too. Yeah, that's also another big
Right.
one in Hawaii. Not as big. To your question, it again, it depends. I mean, if it's a it could depend on like the owner occupant, if it's an owner occupant, or if it's a place that's tenanted. I had a investor client recently that I represented on the buy side that he actually waived. I'm sorry, he didn't waive the inspection, but he did the inspection himself. So he didn't pay for a professional inspection, but he used that contingency for him to go in and take a look at the inspection for himself, yeah, and then
Right.
come up with his own questions to and for resolution.
Yeah, and another thing you can do as the buyer is you can really speed things up and make it a lot quicker. Because at the end of the day, the seller just doesn't want to keep this thing off the market. They want this thing gone.
Right.
So anything you
It's,
can do to help them out,
yep. I
helps.
mean, yeah, like cash is king. If you coming in with a cash deal, then that's even stronger. But yeah, a lot of things you can do, and that like you said, Lane, to try to move things along.
Right. Because
Yeah.
what's the normal inspection period, the default one for inspection, like 14 days, 10 days, or something like that?
I don't think there's a default. We used to be we like 10
Yeah.
on both sides. I mean, the long on the buyer side you want longer, but on the seller side they want shorter. Right to your point.
Right. Right. I know other states they have like a default value in there, kind of, they keep
Yeah,
things neutral again. Yeah.
I don't think we I use the default because it typically
You
doesn't.
always you always put the number in there, and you kind of figure out who you're working with on the other
Yep,
side, right?
yep, right.
Bunch of
And
mind
then
games.
so yeah. Oh, and then there's another contingency seller to find a new home might be a issue. Okay, and then comes the best part, right? Or second to the best part is the funding and the closing, right? So I think the title companies will typically say, don't forget number one, the funds, either the down, to cover the down payment and the rest to close, or the remaining of the cash funds, and then of course proof of identification. Just put that in. Um, Going in, typically you'll go. This is set up by the title and escrow company, and you typically meet there with with the lender if it's financed, and your agent. And a lot of times, if it is a finance deal, the majority of the documentation that you're gonna fill out is for the loan.
Right. And for I think when I was first buying properties, I didn't really understand this whole appraisal thing. So maybe we can kind of highlight this. So they're gonna kind of the last step right before you get the property. and the loan funded is that they're going to go and appraise the property, and it needs to get appraised for higher than or equal to the purchase price. If
Right.
not, there's a couple of things that's going to happen. They're going to either say, "Hey, you got to come with a little bit more down payment because we're going to increase your loan size to cover this property,"
Mhm.
or another option is to go back to the negotiating table and retrade and say, "Hey, man, this thing didn't appraise. It's like 20 grand less than what it is," and what's your thoughts on this market? Are kind of like sellers kind of saying, "Well, too bad, so sad," right?
No, well, the thing is with that, is that if the seller was to, um, say too bad, so sad, that there is the potential that they go through the process again, that the appraisal will come in, at the same price or less, and they may have that same issue. Um, it is challenging because of um, the fact that our the prices are on an upswing. So for the appraisal side, a lot of times, and I'm not the appraisal specialist, as a disclaimer, but they're using as their basis, they're using closed transactions. So of course we know on an upswing, things that are closing in the future are going to be higher, right? So in this scenario, the history doesn't necessarily um, show what is today's market. So that's the challenge at hand from the seller, the appraiser, and the buyer standpoint, right? So it's up to the seller if they want to take that risk and be the one to say, "Nah, I'll try again. We'll start the process all over with the next buyer, and start from day one and go through this again." So in this scenario, I hate to say it, but it depends. It depends on what the seller is looking for, and different factors. What is the difference that you? And then sometimes maybe the buyer can meet them halfway and come up with a little bit.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we make that loan to value ratio come up. And then the best part of it is taking possession, getting your keys, and having your mortgage.
What are you doing for your guys once they get a home other than a cool handshake? Are you getting them
That's
some kind of?
that's a secret. That's a secret,
Oh,
Lane.
okay.
No, it depends. I hate to tell you, but yeah, it totally depends on the client because I like to celebrate with my clients based on what their interests and what they like to do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So, so
Sweet.
yep. So that pretty much sums up all the steps. I mean, there are a lot, and it is a long process. But I think for me, I really enjoy the the journey, and so that's part of the thing too. I say like my added values. I go on the. I want it to be enjoyable for my client, and if they don't find it enjoyable, then at least least painful as it can be. But um, it's fun, and when you're buying a new place, it should be fun and it should be exciting, and there can be times when things might be stressful, but um, it's about enjoying the journey, right? So that's what I like to say to my clients, and hopefully they appreciate that.
Right. And that was one of your clients there, right? That closed on their deal.
Yeah.
Kind of a weird guy,
Ye-
single.
for the record, Lane put that gif in there.
So yeah, if you guys are interested in more information, contact deanueda at gmail.com. If you guys want a PDF deck of this webinar, more of a read it at work in your cubicle kind of person, shoot us an email. You can get that to you, and Dean will probably do a free home consultation for you guys. But I think that's it. If you guys like this content, please check out our monthly videos, a little bit shorter format. Try and keep it to 10, 15 minutes where we kind of break down the market. We call it Hawaii Real Estate News now. Who knows if we ever have to change the name? But you can subscribe to our channel on YouTube. And if you guys are interested in checking out the Hawaii Investor Club, text aloha to 314-665-1767. And anything else, Dean, before we get going?
No, and like I said, I think it's a buying your first place, or even if it's an investment property, should be fun. So go with someone you trust and someone that you're gonna enjoy the journey with. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for putting the bro in poker, man. See you later.
Okay, take care.
Bye.